Welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Junkie. On this episode, we have David Lucarelli, the writer and director of a new play, Crude, a completely unauthorized play, now playing at the Hollywood Fringe Festival.
Fill me up with a barrel full of monkeys, 'cause I hate being bored, I hate being bored. Load me up 'cause I'm such a junkie. Every day all I want is more. So entertain me right now. So entertain me right now.
Hey everyone, I'm Hayley and I'm joined by my fellow junkies,
Nicole
and Shauna.
And we are the Pop Culture Junkies, recording as always at Olympus Games in Mesa, Arizona. Our special guest this week is David Lucarelli. David is a writer, musician, and sound engineer. In addition to Crude, he is a comics creator, having authored Tinseltown and the children's Vampire Hunting Brigade graphic novel trilogy. He's been published by Alterna, Creator's Edge Press, Omnium Gatherum, DNA Publications, and Wannabe Press. He also has his own podcast called Rock Album Analysts, available on Audible, and he has done sound work for more shows and movies than we can list, including one of our favorites here at Pop Culture Junkie, John Wick. He lives in Hollywood with his wife, son, and cat. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me on.
I'm pretty sure I heard the cat, too. Is that a meow we heard in the background?
Yes. She'll probably be a constant companion in the background. She's
I love
very vocal.
it. Hi, kitty.
That's awesome.
That's Leela.
Hi, Leela.
Leela the kitty. So right out the gate, let's talk about your play. So as I mentioned, it's called Crude, a completely unauthorized play, now playing at the Hollywood Fringe Festival. Go ahead and tell everybody what it's about.
Yeah, so Crude is an hour-long, darkly comedic drama about a band who rose up from the LA scene in the 1980s, from the streets of Hollywood, to become a cultural phenomenon, and how for one brief shining moment, everything seemed possible. And I should mention that this play has not been authorized or endorsed by Mötley Crüe or any of its members.
Awesome. So it is loosely based on Mötley Crüe, not endorsed on Mötley Crüe, correct?
Yeah. So we originally, the play was called The Crew, and then we got a kind of negative reaction from a member of the band, and we got a cease and desist letter from their lawyer that they were not happy, even though we had always said that the play was not authorized or endorsed by them. But we certainly didn't want to make them unhappy, because we went out of our way to make sure that, we aren't doing anything further to offend them. And actually, it worked out to make the play stronger, because we went over everything with a fine-toothed comb, and we rewrote a few scenes, and I think it's a stronger play now.
So you guys are Mötley Crüe fans, then, I take it.
Yeah. We're not trying to do something to tear them down, or, this whole play sprang out of the idea that when the book The Dirt was published and then the TV movie came out more recently, I thought to myself, this is kind of the broad strokes of how this band is going to be remembered. And it's not so much that the book and the movie are bad or inaccurate, because I enjoyed both of them. I thought they were both well done, but they were, as a fan of the band for the past 38 years, they felt incomplete to me. And there were a lot of really interesting aspects about the band and who they were and their relationship to the fans and what made them so special, and some personal experiences that I had that I thought, I don't want those aspects of the band to be lost to history, because I sort of feel like, their reputation now is, they were this band that did a lot of drugs and had a lot of sex and got into a lot of trouble. And all that is true as far as it goes. But if that's the only thing that people remember about them, then that would be a shame, because, they weren't a great band because they did a lot of drugs and had a lot of sex and got into a lot of trouble. They were a great band despite all of that.
So you mentioned drawing on personal experiences for the play. What personal experiences are we talking about? Like, were you hanging out with Tommy Lee backstage?
No, it's just, how can I say this? I remember there was a time when Nikki Sixx was saying, that he felt that what the band was saying in interviews was perhaps more important than anything that they were saying in music in terms of how they were communicating with their fans. And, growing up in the 1980s to be a long-haired headbanger kid, you were sort of an outcast in society and you were looked down upon. And, he was one of the guys that said, hey, society may look down upon you guys now, but I see you. And I know that you guys are smart, and I know that you guys are the future leaders of the world. And that struck me and resonated with me as a 12-year-old kid seeing them for the first time, and it's kind of stuck with me ever since. And, there's other things too. I mean, Mötley Crüe came up at a time when there was a lot of racial tension in this country. I mean, there's always a lot of racial tension, but, they put out a song called Fight for Your Rights about how right Martin Luther King was when he said we're all one race. And, they don't really get credit for that. I mean, that stuff is kind of overshadowed, and, not a whole lot of other bands in that genre were talking about that kind of stuff at the time. And if they were, they didn't really have the chops and the talent to pull it off. But Nikki Sixx and Mötley Crüe certainly did.
Sorry, I can't help but think, as you're talking about this and like this influence, I can't help but like think about Stranger Things right now.
I was thinking about that too, actually.
With the character of Eddie Munson, right, coming in this season, because that's kind of, the internet is like a buzz with this whole talk of like what he represents. And as you're talking about Mötley Crüe, that's what I'm thinking in my head is the exactly that outcast.
The long-haired, quote unquote, freak who doesn't quite fit in.
Exactly. And like just being misunderstood and making people feel like they have someone to identify with because they themselves see, they see themselves reflected in that character. So,
yeah. And I think that, a lot of people talk about, Kurt Cobain being the voice of his generation. But to me, Mötley Crüe was one of the bands that spoke to me. And, Nikki Sixx came from a very broken home, and Generation X was pretty much the latchkey kid generation. So I think there were a lot of reasons why they resonated, and there's a lot of reasons why that character in Stranger Things is resonating with people today.
Mm-hmm. What has the reaction been to the show so far from fans?
Well, our first show was last Saturday night, and it was a sold-out show. We had a really enthusiastic audience, and, so far, knock on wood, we've had nothing but positive reviews. So, we're really excited. We've got 4 more shows coming up in June, and, it's just fun to be part of the Hollywood Fringe Fest again. For people that don't know, the Hollywood Fringe Fest, they put on, I think this year it's a couple hundred plays, wow, all in the space of the month of June, all within, maybe 3 to 5 mile square radius of Hollywood. And you get to see, lots of really cool, cutting edge, interesting, experimental shows. And it's just a really cool, supportive festival. Like I myself, I'll go see on an off day when we're not doing a show, I'll try and see 2, 3, 4 other people's shows. And I haven't seen a bad show yet.
That sounds awesome.
Can you give us more of a rundown on the cast?
Yeah, so I'm really super happy with the cast. It's an 8-people show, and it's starring Ryan Ruffing as Nicky, and he is, well, everybody in the cast is talented, obviously, or else I wouldn't have cast them. But the play is really kind of centered around him and is a showcase for his talent. And if he wasn't inhabiting the role of Nicky and making it everything that it could be, the play probably wouldn't work. So you guys mentioned the fact that I'm a sound engineer. What I do is I record actors and actresses for TV and film, ADR. And so I've got, 20 plus years of experience of working with a lot of big name actors. And, there's maybe a handful of them that I would say really the hair on the back of my neck stands up. And I go, wow, these guys have something really, really special. And I think that Ryan is one of those guys. I think that he is a guy that if you go see this play years from now, you will have bragging rights and you'll be able to say, you know what? I saw that guy in a 55-seat theater and now look where he is.
That's awesome. Yeah. What a good jumping off point for him. Has he been in a lot of other plays and such before? He's done film and TV stuff. I don't think he's done a ton of live theater, but he's got a really great natural instinct for it. He doesn't necessarily play the role exactly the same way every performance. He's always trying to find little nuances, little things that he can change and pick up on, but he's really good at adapting his performance in the moment. And, I'm blown away by what he's doing. And, but everybody in the cast, Philip Charlie Daniel plays Doc, the band's longtime manager. And, he's sort of the silver-tongued gent with the sordid past who can talk his way into and out of anything. And, Jeff Skomsky plays Vince, and he is every bit the rock star frontman, who completely sells why girls would be falling all over him. And Roman Gustafaro plays Tommy, and just the lovable, innocent kid that Tommy Lee was back in the day. He's people forget Tommy was only 19 when that band first started out. Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't realize he was so young.
Yeah. When they went on tour, it was like the first time he ever saw snow. So they, as much as they were the bad boys of rock and roll, they were also kind of wild-eyed innocents that were taking in the larger world for the first time. So we kind of touch on that aspect. And then Ed Gage plays Mick, and he is a real guitar player in real life. So there's a point where you hear Mick play some guitar and all those licks and everything. That's Ed. That's from a song that he actually did. And then we've got Madison Hanson, who plays Lita and reporters, and she's fantastic. She's got a terrific emotional range. We've got David Guiniga, who plays kind of the narrator, and then he also has a bunch of interesting and fun character parts throughout the whole show where he gets to wear a lot of hats. He's sort of like a Cuban Peter Lorre, if you will. And then Tamara Torres is the crazy groupie, and then she also has a lot of little parts. And this is actually my second play working with her, because she was also in Dr. Zomba's Ghost Show, which I wrote and produced in 2018 and 2019.
That's what I was going to ask was this your first foray into live theater? Like, is this the first full play that you wrote and directed?
No. So I did a play in 2018 called Dr. Zomba's Ghost Show of Terror, which was a revival of a type of show that they used to do in the 1950s called a ghost show or a spook show. And they used to four-wall movie theater, and then they would put on a show that was kind of a combination of spooky magic, and there'd be sometimes a seance and, maybe a little burlesque. And at the climax of the show, they had what they called a blackout, where all of the lights in the theater would go out, the audience would be in total darkness, and they would be enveloped by supernatural phenomena that they could see, hear, and feel.
That sounds incredible.
I was just saying, this sounds like Shauna's dream come true.
I want to go to one right now. Yeah, that sounds like everything I love. Spookiness and burlesque.
Okay.
What?
Well, yeah. I mean, so basically, we went back. We studied the Ghost Show manuals. We figured out how they did it, and we recreated it, and we added a few new tricks of our own, and it was a big success. We had, a couple sold out runs, and then we put it on as part of Midsummer Scream and packed the house there. So, that was a lot of fun. And then I wanted to get back to doing this next play in 2020, but things got delayed a little bit because of the pandemic.
Oh man, that sounds so exciting though. That sounds like something I would love to go to.
Yeah, it was great. And, I think we're going to try and bring it back for Midsummer Scream next summer. I'm going to talk to those guys and see if they're interested.
Awesome. Well, tell us about how the rest of the run for Crude is going to go. Is it going to have a few more shows at Hollywood Fringe Festival, and then where's it headed after that?
So right now, we've got 4 more shows happening. There's one coming up Saturday, June 11th at 10 p.m., then the following Saturday, June 18th at 7:30. Then we've got one matinee, June 19th at 1 p.m., and the final show is Saturday, June 25th at 6 p.m. So that's all we've got planned right now. There's always the possibility of an encore performance sometime in July. And, we'd like to do some further shows, but it obviously depends on how the rest of the run goes as well.
Awesome. So, we were thinking here at Pop Culture Junkie that we'd love to give away some tickets to your show. Is that okay with you?
That would be great. Why don't we give away 2 free pairs of tickets to the Sunday, June 19th show at 1 p.m.
Epic. All right.
How do we win?
Junkies, go ahead and send us a direct message on Instagram. Find us on our Instagram at pop.culturejunkies.
Slide into our DMs. And
we'll just say first 2, right? First 2 listeners to send us a message will get tickets to go see Crude on June 19th.
Can I be one of them?
What if it's from my fake Instagram account?
I'm like, Shauna and Nicole just messaged me, and they're both headed to Hollywood.
Yes, slide into our DMs, listeners. We'll get you some of those tickets, and then let's talk about how you liked it. Want to hear all about it. Pop Culture Junkie is not providing hotel or transportation
right.
or meal
You
tickets.
got to get yourself to Hollywood. You got to get your own hotel room. We're just going to get you the tickets. All right, David. So outside of your new play, Crude, running now in Hollywood, so huge, so amazing, you've done a bunch of other things and wanted to ask a little bit about your comics and graphic novels that you've done. Could you tell us a little bit about those and kind of what they're about?
Yeah, so I've mainly done 2. The first one that I did is called The Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade, and it's a coming-of-age gothic adventure, kind of like a punk rock Buffy set in Scotland.
Oh, my God, David.
You just said the magic B word for Shauna.
Buffy is
Okay.
Yeah, Buffy is my favorite show of all time. Okay, continue.
Oh, awesome.
This all sounds great so far.
Okay. The reason why it's set in Scotland is because it was inspired by the real-life Gorbals vampire incident. So in the 1950s, hundreds of school kids went looking for a vampire in real life in the Southern Necropolis Cemetery in Glasgow. It happened over several nights. They were looking for a 7-foot-tall vampire with iron teeth that they thought had killed a couple of local children. And the entire incident was considered mass hysteria. They actually blamed it on comic books at the time. And it led to a ban on the importation of American horror comics in the Parliament. So in our book, this group of vampire hunters find what they're looking for. They form the brigade, and then a half century later, there's a couple delinquents drinking in that same cemetery on the night that the vampires come back.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, you can get all 3 volumes of graphic novels. Just go to my shop, Abacab Studios, on Etsy, and I'll be happy to sell them to you at cover price and autograph them for you.
I was going to say, I need them autographed, obviously. Yeah, I'm going to have to hit you up about that. That sounds amazing. And what is
Cool.
Tinseltown?
Yeah, so Tinseltown is a story, period crime drama published by Alterna Comics, but also available on my site, autographed Abacab Studios on Etsy. And it is about one of the first female police officers in Hollywood. And it was also inspired by some historical circumstances. In the early silent era, Universal Studios was kind of a proto-feminist organization in that they had a female mayor, female police chief, and some female police officers. But they also were not above exploiting them by marching them in short skirts to appeal to more prurient interests. And point of fact, the officers sort of functioned as a cross between lot security guards and people there that were to amuse and assist the tourists. And in real life, my mother was a police officer in Pittsburgh for over 20 years. So I knew how difficult it was for her in the 70s and 80s, being a female police officer. So I thought that, I would research where some of the other original female police officers came from and what their experience was like. So the first graphic novel is done and out and collected. And then the second miniseries, the first 4 issues are out. The 5th and final issue, it's called Tinseltown Losing the Light, is done and available for pre-order. And then eventually that will be collected in a graphic novel as well.
Very cool. So I'm always very curious when we get a chance to sit down and interview anyone in the entertainment industry, kind of what led you down this path to be the person that is making plays and becoming a sound engineer and just doing all of this stuff. Like what inspired you when you were a kid?
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I always knew that I wanted to do something creative and work in TV and film and music and comics. And so I was the kid that before there were VCRs, I would take my tape recorder and tape shows off television, just the audio, and listen to them back. And probably the first kid in my neighborhood to have a 4-track recording machine. This was years before there were Pro Tools and things like that. And, I think Star Wars was probably the defining movie of my generation because I have a very distinct memory of seeing it in the very first time in the theater and turning to my dad during the Death Star battle and saying to him, "Is it almost over?" Not because I wanted it to be, but because I never wanted it to end. And I thought, I bet it's almost over. And I was so inspired by that. I literally put on a play in my neighborhood with all of the kids in the neighborhood reenacting the entire movie of Star Wars for no audience because we only had enough, kids in the neighborhood to actually act out the role.
That's awesome.
That's adorable. Have you been watching the newer Star Wars content on Disney Plus?
I have, yeah, and I've been digging it. I haven't seen Obi-Wan yet. I've been so busy with the play, but I hear good things. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, no spoilers.
No spoilers tonight.
That's so funny. Yeah, Star Wars is it's a gateway drug to all sorts of things.
To nerddom.
To nerddom in general. It just got me thinking what was my first thing that turned me into a pop culture junkie. You know what I mean? What was the first thing that kind of hooked me in? And I've got to say the X-Files.
Really?
I very distinctly remember being I think I was 6 or 7 years old and my brother sitting me down on the couch, putting his arm around me. I remember watching Home, which is the most disturbing episode of television.
I've never even watched X-Files, and I know that's a disturbing episode.
Yeah, I know. But whereas most kids especially would have been horrified and just absolute, I was like, this is the greatest thing that I've ever seen. So I think that was the beginning of the end for me.
I think
I actually worked on the X-Files.
What?
No way.
Show. Yeah. So here, I'll tell you a quick funny story.
Yes, please.
So Dave Duchovny comes in, and he's reading the monologue, and I forget exactly what it was, but it was something. It was never in the history and blah blah blah. And it's very philosophical and grandiose and whatnot. And he pauses and he goes, this has got to be the most pretentious show in the history of television.
Oh, that's awesome. And true. And one of my favorite things about the show. That's so great.
Yeah, no, it's a great show. Definitely.
I want to hear about John Wick. So you worked on that a little bit too?
Yeah, I did. I wish I had a great John Wick story for you because I'm a fan of the series as well. Both my son and I love to watch it. But, I don't have anything necessarily that stood out from that. They came in and they did their ADR and it was fine, but nothing juicy. Sorry.
No, it's still just cool that you were even involved in the slightest. We love that movie here.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
What are some of your favorite projects that you have worked on, like the things that stand out to you most?
So if I had to choose, I would say probably Fight Club.
Oh, that's cool.
That's one of my favorite.
You keep name dropping all of these properties that Hayley and I are just obsessed with. It's so funny.
Yeah, so Fight Club was really one of my favorite movies, period. And so the fact that I got to work on it was really great. And, Brad Pitt is such a nice, likable guy. He's kind of like everybody's favorite, uncle or older brother that they wish they had, And I remember he came into the studio and he's like, looking at everybody and turns to me and there's like a bunch of women in the studio too. And he goes, "And you, I think I've worked with you before." And at the time I hadn't worked with him before. And I go, "No, I don't think so." And he goes, "Must be your sexual presence." Therefore, giving me a story I can tell to like every woman I ever meet ever since.
It's like if Brad Pitt says I have a sexual presence, then I really must have one.
I must be doing something right. But, like working on the show, we also did the DVD commentary, and he came in and he made everybody margaritas while we were doing the DVD commentary, which again never happens. I mean, so yeah, I'm a big fan of Mr. Pitt.
Oh, I love hearing that, like celebrities who we think are so untouchable are actually just nice people. Warms my heart.
Yeah, he's definitely one of them.
Do you have any other stories that you experienced while you were working in Hollywood?
Yeah, so let me see. I got to work on The Force Awakens, which was really cool because I live in Hollywood and they had the cast and crew screening within walking distance of where I live. So, I literally got to walk out of my condo down the street with my son and take him to a screening of a movie and a series that, I had seen the first one so many years ago and had inspired me to want to work in the industry. So I kind of felt like the circle was complete.
That's amazing.
I just I don't know, just like scrolling through it for anybody listening, like just look up David on IMDb. Like it's crazy to me as I'm looking at like your catalog of work, just like the volume of projects that you have been involved with, like The Greatest Showman, Ready Player One, The Orville, like it's just crazy to me. And you most recently, it looks like you were involved with the Cheaper by the Dozen movie, the kind of reboot that they're doing on Disney Plus. Am I right?
Yeah. Actually, so most of my career, I was at 20th Century Fox. I actually have to update my IMDb because, I'm working at Periscope Post and Audio now. And so that's been really cool. Working on a lot of smaller pictures, but definitely some genre related ones that if you're kind of in the nerd and geek world, you would be interested in and excited about. Unfortunately, a lot of them I have to sign NDAs, so I can't talk about them yet.
Being the key word.
But The Greatest Showman was definitely another highlight. Working on that show with Hugh Jackman, who I'd worked with before on the X-Men. And,
oh, please tell me he's delightful too.
He's another one of those guys that is just a charming, lovely, incredibly hardworking human being. And,
Good.
I remember there was one time where he was a new father, and he literally brought in his baby and had his baby down in the bassinet, while in between doing lines of ADR. So, he was both an attentive father and a good looper.
If I wasn't already like madly in love with him, please.
He just won over every woman now, even more so. So, David, what are you watching right now? What do you listen to on your drive? What are you reading? What's going on right now in the pop culture world for you?
Let's see. Well, I got really into podcasts during this whole pandemic. So I've been listening to a couple ones that I'm a big fan of. One is called Be Scared.
Ooh.
Are you guys familiar with that?
No, what's that?
Okay, so basically people write in and they tell about their scary experiences with either supernatural phenomenon or crazy people or whatever. And it's a fascinating podcast, and the guy basically just reads their stories. But, I don't know. I'm fascinated by strange phenomena, and I'm a horror writer, so it hits all my bases.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, that does sound cool.
And then there's another podcast called Deep Cuts, which is they kind of look at sort of obscure pop cultural phenomena, or not even necessarily pop cultural. Some of it's more historical, but if you want to check out that podcast, I would suggest there's an episode that they did, Andrew WK, basically postulating that, he's very consciously playing a whole bunch of different roles as Andrew WK, and there's all this kind of kayfabe about it. And once you go down that rabbit hole, it's just a fascinating episode about how much he may or may not be who he really seems to be.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that sounds like our pop conspiracy junkie episode.
Right. He does seem like an enigma for sure.
Yeah. And let's see, TV, what have I been watching? I love the show Riverdale.
Riverdale is really it's ridiculous, but it sucks you in so hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they just throw everything but the kitchen sink against the wall, and it's batshit crazy.
Yeah.
But they seem like they're having such a good time with it. Mm-hmm. They're just when you think they've gotten as outlandish as they possibly could be, they keep upping the ante, and there's something about that is so charming.
Yeah, I really liked
Riverdale. I don't know. I
too.
have so much fun with it.
That's awesome. Do you like all the other CW shows too, like the Flash and Arrow, all that kind of stuff, the superhero shows?
Yeah, I've watched those over the years. Definitely. I'm a Berlanti fan, but maybe my favorite superhero series currently would probably be Titans.
Oh, interesting. I haven't given that a whirl.
Yeah, that one's on HBO Max.
Yeah, it's cool, especially because it's kind of a lot of it takes place in the world of Batman, and there's a guy who plays sort of the retired Batman, Bruce Wayne, and I think he does a great job of it, and the guy that plays Nightwing or Robin is great, and it's worth checking out. It's definitely a show that maybe wasn't great right out of the gate, but I think it's found itself along the way.
Nice. And I know we were touching on podcasts a little bit, but you have your own podcast too, right? The Rock Album Analysts.
Yeah. So what that is myself and a couple of my lifelong best friends who also happen to be rock musicians and big rock fans. We take a ridiculously in-depth look at a different rock album each week. So, we've gone through the entire catalog of Kiss and Mötley Crüe and Guns N' Roses, and then we did sort of a obscure, forgotten rock classics season, and now we're doing like the best-selling rock albums of all time. So
nice.
We just did like AC/DC Back in Black and Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon and that kind of thing. So we do it, we did it real consistently all during the pandemic, and now our schedules are so busy we kind of do it whenever we have time, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That's really cool. I'm going to check that out too. Most of my podcasts, besides Pop Culture Junkie, obviously, I listen to a lot of true crime. So
cool.
Always good to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah. There's something about true crime that just goes well with podcasts, isn't there?
It really does. And the one I listen to is called Wine and Crime. So it's these three chicks who they pair a different wine with whatever theme of crime they're talking about that week. And by the end of the show, they're just completely trashed and off the rails, but it's entertaining.
Nice.
Can you tell us more about like living in Hollywood? Because I visited there in October and I absolutely loved that, and like the Beverly Hills area and everything. So what brought you, obviously the whole industry and everything, but was Hollywood always your desired location to be in with the career that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, there's Hollywood, I guess, the industry, and then there's Hollywood, the actual neighborhood,
okay.
And I love both. There's that saying that nobody ever kills themselves in Hollywood because you never know what tomorrow might bring. And I think that there really is a kind of inspiring creative energy in the air. With things like the Hollywood Fringe Fest, being a shining example of it. It's not necessarily the easiest place to live because, there are negative sides to it, like traffic is terrible. It could take you 40 minutes to go around the block sometimes, but you will have experiences and opportunities living here that you wouldn't have anywhere else in the world. So for me, that makes it more than worth it. There's no place else I'd rather be. I've been in Hollywood for a long time now, so I kind of remember when I first got here in the early 90s, you didn't want to be alone on Hollywood Boulevard after about 9 o'clock at night because there was like gang members and drug addicts and lots of violence and stuff. And then, it gentrified for, a long, long period. And I used to love just walking around with my son and taking in the local flavor and seeing what was going on. And, unfortunately, recently, I'd say in the last, 6 or so years, the homeless population has just exploded. So, now I still love to walk around Hollywood, but, it is a different experience. And I don't know. I'm not sure what the solution is to it, but there are major homeless encampments every few blocks that look like something out of the Great Depression. And I keep voting, for aid for the homeless every time it comes up as a measure, and, all millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, and it doesn't seem to help the problem. If anything, the problem seems to be getting worse. So,
that's sad.
I don't want to paint too rosy a picture of my neighborhood because it isn't perfect. But again, there's no place else I'd rather live.
It's interesting. I find California so fascinating as a lifelong Arizonan, right? It's kind of bred into us to hate California and everything it represents.
Right.
And, but it's so funny to me because it is like, as you're talking, that is California to me. It is like two completely opposite ends of a spectrum. It is like home of the most exciting, the most
the rich
fun,
and the famous,
the rich and the famous, right? And then, just the worst problems of our society can all be found right there too. So it's interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is kind of a huge gulf, I think, between the haves and the have-nots, and again, I wish I had a solution. I don't think that there are any simple, easy answers, but hopefully things will get better.
So would you agree with a statement where people say, only go into the entertainment industry if you have to, like if it's the thing that you have to do, then do it. Otherwise, do something else. Like if you're talking to, I teach high school. So if there's a teenager that's like, oh, I want to break into Hollywood. I want to go into the industry. Would you be like, yeah, absolutely. Or
run for the hills?
Run for the hills. Yeah.
Yeah, it is tough. I'll say this. When people come out here and they go, okay, I'm going to give it 6 months, or I'm going to give it a year or two, I think that putting those kinds of limits on it are self-defeating, because things take time. It takes time to establish yourself and learn enough to be able to function. And, I had a Bachelor of Science from USC in recording arts, and I started working as a runner at a recording studio for $5 and $6 an hour for, a couple of years out of college. So, I do think that people have this unrealistic rags to riches vision of what Hollywood can do for them. And sometimes if that doesn't happen overnight or very quickly, they can become very disillusioned.
Yeah.
But, there's a great line in a Dee Snider song where he says, "It may take a lifetime. It may even take 10. Nobody knows me, but they all will in the end." And if, I think of the novel Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, when he says, "I've told you what I'm afraid of, but I will also tell you what I do not fear. And I do not fear making a mistake, even a lifelong one." And I think if you come out here with that attitude and give it everything that I have, and with the understanding that there are no guarantees and that it may not work out and probably won't work out in the way that you expect, if you're flexible enough and willing to make sacrifices, then by all means, this is the land of the dreamers. And if you're a dreamer, there's always room for one more.
Kind of sounds like us here at Pop Culture Junkie Podcast. We're going to keep on chugging along.
Keep on trucking.
Till everybody knows how famous we are.
All right, David. So where, where can people find out about your show and find out any info about you, anywhere, any links that you have that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so the best place to find out about Crude is to go to hollywoodfringe.org and simply search for keyword Crude. It'll come right up and you can get tickets. And by the way, if you want to get your tickets half off, use discount code DAVEL. So DAVEL. And you can get your tickets to the show for only $6.
Nice.
And then if you're interested in my comic book stuff, and then you should probably go to Etsy.com, search for Abacab Studios. That's the name of the shop. And my general website for, landing point is abacabstudios.com. And if you're interested in my band, the music that we do, we're not really a fully functioning band, but we still put out some things here and there. The name of the band is Dame Fortune, and we're on Apple Music and Spotify and all that good stuff. And then, like you guys said, the name of the podcast is Rock Album Analysts, and we're pretty much everywhere.
Gosh, you have so much going on. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, keeps me off the streets.
That is awesome. And then again, to remind our listeners, if you guys want to win tickets to go see Crude, find us on Instagram at pop.culturejunkies. Slide into our DMs, send us a message. First two listeners.
Nothing creepy, okay?
And
no feet pics.
Nothing crude.
Nothing crude.
Yep. And I just need first name, last name for both tickets and their emails.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Before we go, David, first of all, thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thank you for being a part of this with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
Shauna, you want to let everybody know where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Shauna Trinidad on Instagram and Twitter, ShaunaTrinidad.
Nicole?
You can find me, Nicole, on Instagram and TikTok at Nicole_Eldridge and on Twitter at NAEldridge14.
And you can find me, Hayley, on Instagram at 30nerdythriving. Of course, you can always go to our website, popculturejunkie.com. Find us on Facebook, Pop Culture Junkie Podcast, and come join the Pop Culture Junkie support group. We are also on Twitter at Pop Junkies, and like I mentioned before, on Instagram at pop.culturejunkies. Send us a message, win your tickets to go see Crude in Hollywood. David, thank you again. Thank you all for listening, and be sure to come back next week for another hit of pop culture.
Pop Culture Junkie is a production of Pop Culture Entertainment Group.